We've got two video cameras here. Both of them are the same model number, but they're different. So we've got an NV-M3 here, as it says. EN version, English maybe? NV-M3, and then we got this one here, which is the Japanese model. NV-M3 also, but the cameras are different. This one here uses a tube for the camera, whereas this one is CCD, and that's why this part is flat, whereas this has a bump there. The viewfinder arrangement is also different. This is slides like that and doesn't really go flat, not properly flat, whereas this one here, it folds down flat. And I think this is using some IR type of autofocus, whereas on this one it says it's piezo autofocus. Yeah, it doesn't have that thing at the bottom edge there, so I'm not sure. Maybe it's behind there, don't know. In a recent live stream we tried out this camera, so I can insert a bit of that. Ready? Oh, look at that. I think it's going. It's just blurry. What's it looking at? So it sort of works, but it's put a pretty gross picture. Oh, that's the controller, isn't it? Not particularly good. You can see there's a waveform monitor down the bottom there, so you can see what the video waveform looks like, which is quite exciting. Should we brave putting a tape in here and see if it destroys it or whether it works? Wow, that tape is PAL and this machine's NTSC, but it seems to accept it, so let's stick in an NTSC tape that I don't want to destroy, because I've been using that for verifying things. But didn't chew up this tape, so we'll try this one, which actually has some stuff on it. There you go, look at that. It's Macross Plus from a Laserdisc. It was recorded onto that tape a very long time ago. It seems to work, other than the picture is kind of blurry and weird looking, but the mechanism seems to function fine, which is interesting and surprising and good. What we're going to do today is we're going to take these apart and we're going to see what is different. Well, obviously the camera section is going to be different, but how different? And is the mechanism part with the VCR stuff all the same? We don't need to take apart this M3 because I already have bits from another M3. Got the mechanism that we were playing with on the other video, viewfinder, and then the camera part which goes on there. And so today we only need to take apart this one, the CCD one, and it'll be interesting to discover what is in there and how does it work. Presumably the way to dismantle this M3 is the same as the other one. Can't see why that would be much different. But now the viewfinder, that's different. That comes off and has a separate plug for the signal, rather than on the other M3 where it's all integrated and you cannot disconnect it like that. Unless you take it off, then you can get to the connector that's internal. The handle seems to be the same though. That slides off. Then there'll be the same little bits and pieces under there. Slides out. 3 more countersunk screws. That lifts out. This front part slides back. Ah, look at that, it's a red screw this time under there. That's interesting. Also interesting, this is different because there are some screws in there. Presumably we have to open those. I guess it's freeing up this whole unit. I wonder if this could be retrofitted onto the other M3. Will it have the same stuff under here? I think these are really long screws, yes. Now what happens? That all lifts out. Interesting, there are more red screws. Well, in fact, there are red screws on this model. So we have to take that off. This already seems to be a little bit different to the M3 camera, the other M3 camera, whose front part is like that. See, there's no removable part here, whereas that seems like a plate that can come off. And so I think this part here has been replaced with a sheet of aluminum there. And then there's connectors, because this is now connectors for the microphone and the viewfinder in one. So we should just check that they are the same. Is the viewfinder connector the same here? Looks like it is. Same wire colors. And the microphone connector, hiding over here, looks the same. It's probably compatible circuits. You'd think it'd be pretty compatible if the model number's the same. Oh, that's screwed into plastic. Okay, I think we have to go further before we get that one off. We'll take the cassette loading door off. Pick out these bungs. Oh, that's a bit cracked there. I wonder if someone's had a go in this before. It looks a bit wonky, that part there. Maybe this has been dropped or it tipped off of a tripod and it's cracked the molding inside there, the casting. It's probably going to fall apart, isn't it? Because whatever was in there has gone all cracked and loose. This will be my first time looking in this type of M3. Taken apart the other ones many times. The 4 screws on the back, and then that comes out as before. One screwed back there underneath, and I think some stuff's ready to lift off now. Oh no, we have to get the eject button off because that clips everything together. Oh, that's different, is it? Yeah, the handle bracket thing comes off with the eject control. I don't remember that happening before, unless it's just lodged in there normally. Oh, there's a little clip there that's missing. Oh, look, it doesn't have that whole board that was part of the camera in the other unit, in the other M3. So that part doesn't exist here. Interesting. Let's get the other side off, and then we'll see about how the camera stuff opens up. The power switch board is also different. Oh, it's because on this one the power switch is over there, and it's just the standby that is on this part. That's interesting. Oh yeah, look at that. That is broken there. And that's fallen down onto the circuit board. That's really dodgy, isn't it? There's no insulator there. I wonder if I can replace that with one from another camera. Might be the same. This looks quite different along the bottom edge there. In the other model there's a lot of wiring going along there. So much wiring that it's got its own... Oh no, it's not that much. Oh, maybe it's the M1. I think it's similar. On the other M3 there's this cover which goes along there to hold it all in for holding the stuff down this side. Whereas in this one it's only on that back edge, it doesn't go around. And it's also different to the M11, that's what I've been thinking of. So this part is slightly different to that one because it goes right out there, whereas this one is necked down. Not really sure why or if that matters. Oh, that whole thing is wonky. Oh, that screw there might be ripped out. Maybe the whole chassis is bent. It might be pushed in at that edge there. Let's carry on and get the camera section disconnected so we can take a look at it. We'll just put this back for now. And I'm not sure if this part with the grip comes off first or not. It doesn't sit nicely because it's munted. Okay, looks like you can take this all off as one unit by undoing the red screws. I'm just going to temporarily secure the eject control back there so it doesn't flap around and break its wires off. There's a problem because they just soldered on there without any strain relief. So there are 3 screws here that are red that we can see. Really good JIS screws. Now the control for the standby switch comes with it. Guess we'll cut off these cable ties and see what happens. One little wire is different. I don't know why that is. What's up with that? Just one wire. Whereas everything else is quite long. That one there looks like a removable cable tie. It's got a little latch thing. If we can remove that, or could they do that? Provide a removable one? It's not that removable, you still have to get in there and unhook it. Yeah, I don't know. There you go, removed. Oh no, it just snapped. It's where the clip part of the cable tie is external. See that? The clip part of the cable tie is external on that one, so in theory you could get in there and undo it, but it just snapped off anyway. Oh, those are different wires, not the one that comes in here. But yeah, what is that blue wire doing? In order to continue now, we have to work out how to get this thing apart. We've undone screws on the bottom. Oh, here we go. Okay, so we just need to undo these top ones in. It should be able to come apart. Oh yes, and that has a screw hiding there. And one hiding here. Whoa, all of the camera stuff. Need to untangle all this so we can inspect it closely. It's interesting how the other M3, you don't have to undo any cable ties to get everything completely separated and apart. Whereas this one's different. We're just going to have to cut these cable ties off to peel out the wires and see what goes to where. I don't know what's up with the blue wire still. Yeah, so it's connected by several bunches. It looks a little bit different to the M3, the other M3. Let's open this board up so we can investigate it. Now, unlike the M1, on this model you've got to undo some wires in order to fold this board out. So on the M1 this was just a bunch which came down through the hinge, whereas now on this M3, all the M3s, it's a ribbon. And same with this one here, which before came from down here and was a wire going down. And you can get an extension for this so that you can have this folded out and still run the camera for servicing. So this is a little bit different. There's two cables that come out now going into the camera section. So it's not just a different camera, there's different other bits. This main board here is different. We need to work out where those cable assemblies go to. We need to work out where these cables go to and what they do and what is this other one and that blue wire. I'll just do some investigating. Okay, that one blue wire that was pulling tight goes onto this board and it's got a connector there, just a 1-pin little thing. So I don't know what that's all about. I think we should check on the other M3 if it has that. Not easy to do without taking this bottom part off, but maybe we should swap that molding over anyway so that this camera can have a nicer or not destroyed base part. Since I've only got one of those cameras, we've got a bunch of the other type of M3. Now you can see there, in that part there where it says video, there is nowhere for the connector. Or is there? Oh no, there is. The writing is different. There is still 2 little holes there. So that maybe it can have that connector. We have to find the service manual for this the CCD version if we want to know exactly what's going on there. It's a different version of that molding with bits cut out of it, which that's wrecked it because It's made it weak by not having this whole solid bit along there. You see it's changed to this. Where does that go? There. And whatever was there, which has disappeared somewhere. So it's been weakened and then suffered because of it. And so it looks like that could have had that connector there. Strange. Okay, so we've pulled that out, which means now we should be able to pull this back a bit. See, now that really lifts out much nicer because it's not constrained by that wire that they made really short for some reason. And then we've got this other one. Where does that go to? It goes all the way up to this other side where it's a 3-pin connector but with only 2 pins loaded. I wonder if that's the trigger one that we get on the other camera with these blue wires. No, I don't think so. No, because it's the one that goes below a red connector, which is here. Well, it's that one. That one, which is the power to the autofocus. Okay. Oh, well, that makes sense then. So that there is the power to the autofocus circuit. It's all tied in so tightly. And wrapped around that other single blue wire. Untangle that. Oh, and then there's another tie down here. So it goes into there. Are you sure? Yeah. They messed something up there and made a couple of the cables much shorter than the others. Single blue wire. It's wrapped up in the tape there. And it's part of that green connector. Okay, pretty weird that it's sheared like that. Ah, I see what's going on. So that bunch there takes whatever that is, plus the power and standby switch. You see the power switch one there is that red one, so that gets bunched into there. And then the standby switch is that one that came out and that gets bunched into there. So that extra connector there is the equivalent of the power switch and something else. What is the something else? Okay, so it is the same. It's the same as on the other one. It's that connector there, which is 10 ways. And on this model, the other M3, 7 of them go to here, which is the standby and power switch board. And then the other 3 is this blue, all blue wires, and those are going to the 8, 9, 10 positions of that same connector there. So that lines up with what we see over here on this one. So this bunch of wires here has got the standby switch, the power switch, and then it's got 3 more, which are those ones there, which go to this plug here, which is also shared with that random one blue one. So that means other than that random one blue wire, everything matches between the 2 versions of M3. And I'm wondering if maybe this blue thing is part of it being an NTSC camera, whereas the other camera, the other M3 I've got, is a PAL, so maybe it doesn't need it, maybe? I don't know what that is. That just came out of somewhere. It looks like something that went around there, doesn't it? Maybe it did. I'd have to look back at the video to determine what that came from. Notice something really weird. Look at that. It's a capacitor way up on a stalk. There's another one there. Must be the molding of the hand grip here, I guess. Pushes so closely against there, they had to put the capacitors up on stalks. Strange. That there has also been quite badly pinched. Probably doesn't want to have that done to it. And so the focusing stuff must be all internal to the lens now, because there doesn't appear to be any other pickups apart from the light sensor there for the white balance stuff. Okay, one more cable tie, and then we can separate these by unplugging that there, which is the power, the autofocus power, although they might use it for something else on this. And then we've got the 2 on here, the camera connector and then the power switch and VCR trigger connectors. And now that is completely separate. Apart from that being not 3-way, they should be compatible between the 2 models. That is 3-way on the other end, so by changing the cable assembly over, it could be done. And it's quite interesting how generously the length is on these wires. So that should be compatible with this thing here. Yeah, so we can make it even longer. Although we can't lengthen that one. Although this should all operate without this being there. This part is all the camera business. Maybe we should test it. Unplug that and see what happens without this being connected. Maybe the color will go away or some other thing like that. It's very bizarre though that they made that wire so much shorter. Who knows what was going on there. Oh look, there's another little board on the bottom. Looks like some kind of power supply stuff. In order to get this off we have to undo that. 1 2-pin connector that goes up to there. Wonder what that goes to. It goes to whatever that extra little switch is. Zone on off. That must... is that the autofocus zone that we saw when we powered up the camera? That square thing that was in the center. I guess that's what that would be. It is set to on there. So perhaps that's what that is. Some kind of power supply thing. I'm going to take this board out so that we can get a better look at it. Oh, there's a ground wire there which goes to that front part, but also coming off that is that sensor. There's a ribbon cable there which is short and goes into a connector down there, and that will have to be undone. First we'll get this grounding wire off. At least that one goes onto some lugs. We can expose a screw by bending this out of the way. Seems to be quite well packed in there. That wire doesn't look in the best condition the way it's been soldered on. There's a washer there under it. It's like a plastic washer. So they're insulating it from the circuit board, but it goes through to the metalwork. I wonder if that was some extra stuff that had to be done to clean up the signal a bit or pass some standards testing. Now we'll see if we can get this out there. I know there's a bunch of parts on the other side because I could see through it there. There's some fusible. Look at that, there's heaps of stuff on the bottom. Oh yeah, we can get to that ribbon cable pretty easily. So that's good. So in there, difficult to see, there's a light sensor. Doesn't seem to come out easily, it must be clipped in. And we got a better look at the camera stuff. All split across 2 boards. Is that wires? Where does that go to under there? They're quite thick wires. Looks like they go up to the iris motor. Maybe somewhere else too, I'm not sure about that. But yeah, they at least go up to the iris motor. That stuff going over the top has another cable tie. We should cut that off as well. But not cutting the wires. Yeah, there's a lot of unusually thick wires in this. How do they undo those? Marked one of the connectors red, which is nice so that you know which way to put it back. Yeah, and then there's the power switch. There's that bunch of stuff coming across. There's also some motor wires going to some motors. I think that one there's the zoom motor by the look of it. And there's a white and blue one that comes off. That one's the focus motor. Is that right? Oh, I got them around the wrong way. Yeah, that's the focus motor. The other one's the blue. The blue and white one is the zoom motor. Both of those come through to the other side. And there's a bunch of other stuff. Go to whatever that is. I don't know, that's some stuff that enters into the where the CCD is. I'm not sure what that is at the moment. You might have to go deeper, see what's lurking below. I wonder if we'll be able to get all this back together at the end. That can just come out. That must be the video signal coming off and the sync. And these other ones here will be the power going into there. And there's a bunch of screws of different lengths. That's dodgy, isn't it? Oh, it's stuck down by something. And there's this little plastic cap thing was sitting on the post there to make it high enough. That's kind of dodgy, isn't it? And then that ribbon there is what's coming out of where the CCD lives. And also this connector, which is really short. And that one, which is an inline connector there, going onto some little, whatever that is, bodged in little board. Wow. And that little plastic thing's gone again. We might put that special screw back there, just so we don't lose it. And that was the special screw that went there into quite a bad thread. That might have had a hard life or been cross-threaded at some point. So that wire there must be some power coming over, going into the CCD part. And then there's a whole bunch of different shielded wires coming out. And then this... Let me get that flex off. There we go, now we can see this better. And so all of those quite thick wires that come from over here go to the little iris servo thing. Then we've got a bunch of stuff down here. There's some pots, which so can see the position of the autofocus and also of the zoom. Pots. And so on the other camera, the other M3 camera, it used an absolute position for the lens using that weird 6-bit curved absolute encoder thing. Whereas this time, in this one, it's just a variable resistor. And for some reason they got one on the zoom as well. I guess it's so it can know how zoomed it is or isn't. Not easy to see where the connections for that are going. So there's a purple coloured wire there, which is going into that heat shrink, but it doesn't seem to come out. Oh, it goes onto that middle pin, okay. I guess the blue one goes onto the other pin. Yeah, so the blue and purple wires are the two positions, and then the other wires, should be that red, black, and that yellow, they go onto the other side. So the red and black ones, looks like it's a power distribution board there, which powers each side of the variable resistors. And then there's a yellow wire, which does something with whatever that is going inside the sensor. Maybe think it's something like a bias light, which we saw on the other one. I guess we can undo it. They put notches there so you can get a screwdriver down, which is nice, except I don't have a long enough one to really take advantage of that. But anyway, let's take this off just for fun so we can see what's going on in there. That stuff, that's just controls, it doesn't have anything else on it. That stuff. Okay, that's the reveal. Okay, we've discovered two things at the same time. That's why the picture was so disgusting, because the IR sensor there, or the IR filter there, is completely frosted over. Yeah, I'd forgotten that happens in these old cameras. And the other thing is, look at that, that's the autofocus. Piezo autofocus. That's what they called it, wasn't it? I wonder what that means. So that's a piezo disc around there, that's where those wires were going to, and it's got a lens on it. So that means it can make slight adjustments to the focus with this piezo disc thing. That's interesting, I never realized that that's what that meant. Piezo autofocus, I thought it was something to do with the way it sends stuff out. Never thought or looked into it before, but there you go. So piezo autofocus means it's got a piezo element, or piezo, whatever you're supposed to say these days. Where I come from, it's always been piezo. Anyway, so that's got a lens attached to the middle of it, and that can move in and out slightly. So varying the voltage on that will move the lens. That's very cunning. And that also means what we need to do is take all of this apart and rip out the IR sensor. I don't think I've got anything to replace it. I've got a smaller one somewhere that I saw that we took out of another camera, but I don't think I've got one that big. And anyway, I don't know where it is now. Oh, there's so much stuff builds up from dismantling and scrapping various things that it's really hard to keep track of it all. So in order to get this off, going deep in this thing, we're going to have to peel that off to access these screws. So we need to look at that very carefully so that we know how to put it back, which direction those wires came out, so that we can put them back in the same direction. This will help us remember. Then, presumably that will just peel off. That means now we've got to conclude this video by proving that the camera works better. I don't want to rip that cable, but it probably We have to slide all this stuff in through that small hole to get into the next layer. Do we? Or I don't know. We can do it from this angle. Okay, we'll peel that off. Hopefully I haven't ripped that. Not any more than it already was. Yes. Oh look, there's a hole there, so we could have accessed the screw on the other side without taking it apart too much more. Anyway, too bad. Just get this out of the way a bit so that it's easier to work on. Is that gonna work? Okay, now we're gonna open up this. Oh, but that's also soldered shut. There's 1, 2, 3 locations where it's soldered in. Okay, I have to get a soldering iron juiced up now. So we're going to have to go all the way to taking the sensor board off, which I presumably is the other end of those two screws. Then we can rip that bit of IR filter out. Then, yeah, problem is I don't have anything to replace it with. There was the other one down in this corner. Okay. Okay, now we're on the back of the image sensor. It's there. Now we're going to take this off. There's the image sensor. Now here's the thing that's ruined. The IR sensor. So that's gone all frosty. And I don't think that can be cleaned. Just think about that for a short time. Whether I can find that one that I supposedly had, and can you clean that? I'll be back in a moment. I tried scraping and cleaning this thing, but it's still cloudy. It's not. You can see there's some layer of stuff on it that appeared to be getting scraped off, but it's not. It's not getting scraped off. Can't find what I was looking for, but I found this one, which came out of that Sony camera, and the size is similar, I think. Maybe we should try putting that in? I thought I had another one somewhere, but I can't find it. Can't remember where it came from either. There was one around somewhere. Anyway, let's take this thing apart from the Sony camera and see if that has got any chance of fitting. Thing is, if it's too small, you're gonna see the edge of it, I guess. You can't see anything here, but yeah, so I pulled out that rod just then, so this is now freed. I see there's a little metal strip in there that holds this glass part in. I think they intended this to be removable, so that should slide out. Okay. It's smaller. Would it fit in this little frame thing? Okay, it seems to fit. Seems to fit in like perfectly. Problem is I've got to trap dust in there now, blowing it with my dirty breath. Maybe that will be good enough. You can see through it alright. Stuff looks blue, so supposedly that's an IR filter. That a remote here. Suppose that filters out IR. Alright, let's see if this can go back in here without falling apart. Alright, and we'll stick this guy back on. Yeah, so there you go, that's the image sensor. Last look at that before we stick it back together. And we'll fit that back in. Now, got to get the soldering iron cranked up again to put this shielding thing back on. What way around does that go? It goes that way. 2 screws there. Oh, that was an unexpected perfect fit. Okay. One more of those to solder on. Quite a gap to jump over, but that seems to do it. Okay, so there's the soldering done. Let's see if we can get this thing back on. Did that go that way? No, it went around that way. And it has some screws that feed back all these little cables through that slot. Okay, now suppose those are just laying in the position that they need to be in. This tape thing went on there. There you go, tape thing is back. Now we got to get this on. Which way around did it go? Okay, so I think that's a locating post. And then there's 3 screws. You see the locating thing there? Like that. Seems to be okay. Guess there's not too much dust in there. Supposed to do this in a clean environment. Okay, then the other side they're just loose at the moment, so get everything lined up properly. Alright, now what? I'm going to pull this stuff back on. They've got to go over there, otherwise it's going to get tangled up with those gears that are there. And now this, that went there? Yep. That went there? Yes, that went there. We're going to try and get this back together without having to do any of those cable tie businesses, because those were a fidgety mess. Okay, we've got to get those screws out of the way. And then this has to clip on 2 little clippy things down the bottom. Oh, okay, the spiky bit of the circuit board goes directly in that clip thing. And that one there squished up a little bit. Now this wire, that ribbon, that doesn't line up at all. That means that we glued that, or stuck that tape thing back on in the wrong position. That's annoying, isn't it? You have to pull it all apart again to fix that. Oh well. Okay, we'll get all that off again. There, we've got to undo all the plugs again. Now that is supposed to be over more. Like that, presumably? Was more of it in there before? Dunno. Maybe it just goes on an angle like that. I guess, yeah, I think that's what happens. Okay. That looks a bit better, doesn't it? Oh, now that little post thing's gone. Where did that go? I should really put that wire on, but we've got to get the other one in later on. I'm not going to do it up tight yet. Okay, that's done. This one, that one, and finally the ribbon is now lined up properly. Or not. Wow, that's really difficult to push in. I think something's not going in properly. It only seems to want to go in one edge. Don't know, can't get the ribbon cable in for some reason. And I'll just force it in with some pliers, okay. No idea why that, but there you go, there's that. Weird, these capacitors like up on little wires folded over. What a strange thing. I guess that's because there's not enough room for them to go down on the board. It's really bizarre. Capacitors out on little extendinators. Okay, let's get the rest of this thing back together. Well, let's try and get the rest of this thing back together. Remember to plug that stuff in before we put it back. Presumably that wire was the one that came out of there. And we got that green stuff. Oh yeah, we have to get more on before we can put that in. One with a green connector there, which I think went through there like that. Seems kind of what we want, but we've got a difficult to get in connector. That another ribbon cable down there, and got that grounding wire that goes over to there. So let's see if we can get this ribbon in. Without wrecking the board in the process. And that one went in pretty easy, probably because I can grab the both sides of it without too much difficulty. Okay, so that should, I don't know if there's any clips in there, I think it just sits in, and then there's the these shortish screws that went in to the plastic. Good. Now we can finish off this by putting the other thing under that grounding screw. Good. And all that massive mess of cables needs to get bunched up a bit. So that one which plugs into the little 2-pin thingy. And this stuff came in around under there. Pretty easy. Okay, now the other side we can't put on because there's one more plug to plug in there, which was this one that came off, which is the autofocus power. So we have to get that in. And we can put that in now, which is the power switch. Now this has to come in. Autofocus power. Now that closes up, presumably. Though I don't think it's going to be that easy because we've got this massive bunch of stuff. It just kind of squishes out of the way somehow. Oh yeah, and there's that one as well, which was taped nicely out of the way, but now it's just freeform wherever it feels like it. Oh yes, and then there was those posts in there. Seems to have gone together okay. Okay, well, let's put that screw in first so that it doesn't get wires going in that place. And we'll do the one on the other side, and we can do the one up here. And we can do these screws on the bottom. I don't know which one was which. Some of these are kind of deep. Oh, that's the one that was fully corroded out before, isn't it? That's kind of cracked. And they seem to go together, or back together, fairly painlessly. So perhaps should we attach this onto... Oops. Attach this onto here again? I can't remember what... Did that come out the other side there? I don't know. That's the one for the standby controls that goes towards the front. And then we've got that single blue wire which also has to go back towards the front. Ah yeah, what we need to do first though is have a look at this mechanism and see the differences that it has. Yeah, it looks like what they've done is made a plate, this aluminum plate, which screws onto the 3 places where the tube camera would normally go. 1, 2, 3. And it also picks up that, which is blocked by that. Oh, I see. So that part there is where the handle and viewfinder mount on, so that's also now part of that new plate. Okay, so the mechanism underneath is very much the same. It's just got this new plate there to attach the other camera to it. Otherwise, it's all the same. So we're going to open this up again because we've got to join the wires, but I think we can join the camera part on first, then join those wires up to make sure that they're just coming out in the right direction here. A really long screw there, which wasn't needed, but they just keep it the same screw that's used in the other positions. Presumably that means we can put this little cover back on, since we don't need to access that stuff in there anymore. Now we need to open this board up again and plug those 2 wires in. I suppose it's a cable, not a wire, since it's a bunch of wires. Now we've got to get all this laying in nicely. And we can put these ribbons back in. Quite fiddly to deal with, and then slide that in without closing the latch halfway. And then the one on the side. Then we've got those tiny little screws to hold that board down. The layout of this is different. I was looking for that chip that smoked on the M1, and then we got the same chip out of the M3 to replace it, which was there, but it's different. It's still got those fuses kind of tacked on, but is that? No, it is the same. That's the chip there. Okay. Alright, oh, I'm remembering the M1 board layout, which is slightly different. So yeah, that is the same there. Now this piece of stuff was on the side. And it's got little hooks, some little hookies. Hooks, which slide down into the mechanism part. That's how it was. Something like that. Now this business, which was all cable tied up, it doesn't matter much because the motors are tied behind that cover, so that was tied like that. Now there's that other one blue wire which came through here, goes onto that little board, and that's the standby control. So we're going to try and get this in. This other one, and that shielded part there. Will that fit? Probably will. Should we screw the board onto it and see what happens? In this case, there's a little notch on that side, so it can slide out. Really long screws for such a short thing that it's screwing through. Thin thing. Okay. Make sure that we're not squashing anything when we screw that onto there. You also see now whether it's bent or not. It looks like it is. The structure underneath is bent slightly. It's just some kind of metal bracket off of the tape mechanism. Which means if we do that one there up tight, this third one, it's going to pull this plate down, which isn't really what we want. Okay, should we power this up? See what happens. See if any of the smoke gets out. Oh, it was that plate there, so we could have replaced that whole plate. That to there, onto that corner, so we could have replaced that to get rid of the bend. Okay, I think we're ready to turn this thing on and see what happens. Got a power supply hooked up here. Now, I don't think we forgot anything, did we? We plugged back in the relevant bits. We won't need that because that just goes to the standby thing. Let's plug it in and turn on. I made the right noise. Oh, we got stuff in the viewfinder. So let's see if we can get it on the screen. Oh, there we go. Look at that. That was quick and easy. And it's fairly well looking like a picture now, isn't it? Not like before when it was just a mess. Problem is it's in a squeezed kind of, whatever you call it thing, aspect ratio. Not that it really matters. Anyway, there's the picture. It looks good now. Do I have a tape? Maybe? Might as well just prove that it plays again. There you go. Problem was YouTube didn't like this last time I played it. So, okay. Well, that works. The best thing is the camera's now got a fairly sharp image. That's really good because it was a bit sad before. Just a bit wonky at the moment with the viewfinder hanging off like that. But there we go. It's got a reasonable picture. Set the white balance according to this. Looks fairly reasonable, or a little bit unhealthy there. It's just the quite sharp light that's happening. I don't know what some of these other things might be. Auto iris. Oh, and that's the autofocus thing. Autofocus seems a bit dead, doesn't it? Although we didn't check if there was a belt missing from the motor, autofocus motor. Who knows if that does anything, that special piezo thing. Do you think it would need to move that? There you go. Ah, okay, let's try that little switch there, that zone thing. Yeah, that's what it does. It turns that little box thing on. So that's interesting. That's the only thing that's not written in Japanese. Well, there's a few other things. But yeah, the only control like that. All the other buttons have Japanese writing, but that one down there says zone on off. Not sure why that. And it's pretty much the same as this one. Zoom. Oh no, the lens parameters are different. That's a 9 to 54mm f1.4. This one's an 8.5 to 51. Slightly less, but slightly wider. Although the sensor size is probably different in that. Yeah, so they're probably the same. That's f1.2, so slightly brighter. And that has the little button to enable the macro. Whereas on this one, there's just a slight detent. Yeah, so the picture is pretty good now that we got rid of that frosted glass thingy. Good result. Hopefully that was interesting. I thought that was interesting to see the differences between two cameras with the same model number but are different. It's pretty bizarre that that exists in the first place. I think next time there's a couple of things. One of the next times we're going to take these apart. This is one from an M5 model. So we're going to take a few of those apart and see if we can work out what's wrong with the one that doesn't work. And we're also going to take a look and see how the NV-M3 differs from the M3, and then how the M7 differs from the M5. That's the upcoming things. Anyway, that's it for today. We had an interesting look inside this M3 and the other different M3s. Let's do one last thing on this camera before we move on. Let's have a look inside this weird viewfinder. This is what we're used to looking at. The one from the M3, NV-M3 camera. Now let's look at the one that's from the NV-M3 camera. The other one. It's got tape on there. That would have flipped up, but I guess it's broken somehow. And whoever had it before put tape on there. I don't really want to peel that off because it's going to get annoying. But yeah, anyway, let's take apart this part. We should be able to get into, see if it's the same as what's inside this one. We'll just have to remember what was in the other one because I don't want to open that up again. Now we have to take something off here. Do it all in one go. We have to undo all those screws. Why is this not being in focus when it was so good before? Okay. Maybe we didn't need to take that off. Ah, that looks different. It's now all on one board. So I have to insert a picture of what the other one looked like. 2510. Is that the same as before? And the microphone goes to this shielded, orange shielded wire, and then into that. Oh, I see. The screw post is on that bit, which clamps the cord. So that has one shielded wire with 2 cores in it, and then the rest is just that, which I think is just it's a mirror of that, isn't it? Anyway, that's pretty straightforward. Little flyback transformer, high voltage wire, tube in there, deflection, the sync separator and horizontal vertical driving chip, and then a few other little bits and pieces, and that's it. Now where was that? Was that on this side? Guess so. What is this fluff that's on? It's like hot glue string. Oh, it's from that. That's connected there has been glued in place. Strange. Does that mean someone's been in here and glued that in? Do you think it fell out? I think they twisted the viewfinder enough it ripped that out. Dunno. Yeah, there's lots of glue strings. Did we need to take any of this stuff off? Any of this thing off? Yeah. Yeah, because half of it's on that side and half of it's on this side, I think. And again, it's a downgrade for the microphone cover, so the original foam is just gone. Whereas the other M3 camera and the M1, they got that nice removable thing. So it doesn't matter that the foam's gone because the microphone's still covered by the plastic grill thing. So, yeah, I don't know why they went away from that because that's quite a nice tidy system. I suppose it's just cost cutting, isn't it? If something's good, then either discontinue it or make it bad. That seems to be the common way that companies work, isn't it? Good product? Alright, let's discontinue it. Good product? Okay, well let's do a cost down exercise on it and take away all the things that make it good. Good business practice. Okay, I don't know if you could see any of that since for some reason the camera started going crazy and won't focus anymore. But yeah, that's what is inside the viewfinder of the M3 and compared to the viewfinder of the other M3. Very good.